you already kind of knew that. Well, the question is, how much money did they donate? Did they donate $5 million? Did they donate $10 million? $20 million?
Yeah.
Try $400 million, right? They donated $400 million. And check this out. This is the breakdown of where Bill Gates' money, and by the way, this is coming from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? So there you go. Good job, guys, right?
Oh, and in our channel, we talked about a lot about what he's doing with our food, farmland.
Well, we're gonna get to that in a second, right? But if you guys want to learn more, there's multiple videos that were released on our channel. Sam and I have both posted videos about it. So out of the 400 million, approximately 25 million is going to, unsurprisingly, NPR, right? You have 13 million going to The Guardian, and you have, for me, what sticks out is you have millions of dollars going to international media outlets such as Univision, right? But
not surprised there too.
Der Spiegel, which is German. I hope I said that right.
No, you did a good job. That was good. Der Spiegel.
Der Spiegel. Okay. Yeah. All right. And then we have the National Media Group from Kenya, and then we also have Bekisia from South Africa. But what's really interesting too is not only has he donated money directly to these media outlets, but he's contributed a large sum of money as well to these different writers associations, right? Because, if you can't only control the media, you got to control the people writing the story, right? So he's donated a little over $20 million to the International Center of Journalists. And in terms of other organizations, he's donated $6 million to the Education Writers Association. So, here's what's really, really interesting to me, right? Because we listen to these numbers and it's like, well, that's bad, that's horrible, right? But here are some of the businesses that he's also invested in as well. So Monsanto, along with Cargill, both of them are businesses that are worldwide distributors in chemical agriculture. We have other issues like vaccinations, right? And we all know that Bill Gates secretly owns the patents on a lot of these vaccinations that were issued out the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And he's also got a lot of hidden agenda, right? So one of the things that we talked about in previous videos relating to Bill Gates is how he secretly is the owner of a lot of synthetic food companies, right? Not only that, but he's also the owner of a lot of non-organic fertilizer companies, which is making a big move in Africa. So let me give you guys a couple examples here on how he's doing that. And this story right here made me sick, right? I was like, even with all the research we've done, I didn't even know this, right? But this is ridiculously sick, right? So Oxford University was one of the leading research organizations when it comes to vaccinations for the virus that we've had recently, right? And they were going to make it open source. So kind of like what Elon Musk did with, electric car technologies, with Tesla technologies,
and we talked about how patents and Bill Gates is like obsessed with patents.
For sure, right.
It's all about profiteering, right?
That's exactly right, right? So, and this is the argument, right, to the opposition where it's like, well, Bill Gates is really trying to help the world, right? Like he's helping climate change and, he's just out here to complete the world. And let's be real, that's what a lot of progressive, a lot of leftist, ideology individuals say. They say that Bill Gates is a hero, he's trying to save the world, and you guys are just a bunch of conspiracy theorists. All of us that are watching right now, you guys are a bunch of crazies, right? Well, check this out. So Oxford wanted to make it open source. Then the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation directly interfered and strongly advised, that was the word that was used in this article, strongly advised that they do an exclusive rights contract with Big Pharma AstraZeneca. Right? And they did. And guess what happened? It made the vaccinations extremely more expensive, and the time that it took to distribute the vaccines actually 6x'd.
Right. Well, because it has to have a profit margin.
Correct. Right. And if you look at if you do some research a little bit, it doesn't take long. Where if you look at the early 2000s, specifically 2002, right, that's when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was actually making hundreds of millions of dollars investments into big pharma companies, Pfizer being one of them. Right. So again, this kind of debunks the argument of, well, they're just doing it to help people, and no, guys, it's anything else. They want control, they want money, they want more of it, right? And not only that, if you want another reason to be biased, right? So NPR profiled a Harvard-led experiment that helps low-income families find housing with affordable issues. Every single expert, I'm just going to summarize it for you to save on time. Every single expert that was quoted worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Wow.
And And not only that, but on the bottom of the article, they put in the fine print, the smallest, like I literally had to zoom in to see this. It says that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funds majority of initiatives in NPR. Right? So again,
that's not. And here's the thing, by the way, it's not like Bill Gates giving money to these media companies, say, hey, do whatever you guys want with it. You know, you guys do a good job, right? Well, let's take CNN for example. CNN received $3.6 million out of the $400 million, right? So CNN specifically received $3.6 million grant. Okay, and basically, this is what was told to CNN. Like, you have to do this. In order for you to accept this money, this is what you need to do. I'm going to quote. It says, reporting on gender equality with a particular focus on least developed countries, producing journalism on everyday inequalities endured by women and girls across the world. While Texas Tribune, which also received millions by Bill Gates, and I quote, to increase public awareness and engagement of education reform issues in Texas. Given that Bill is one of the charter schools, most fervent supporters, a cynic might interpret this as planting pro-corporate charter school propaganda into the media, disguised as objective news reporting. So, it's not. Bill is not saying, "Hey, you do what you guys do normally. You know, get fair and objective journalism going." No. I want you guys to take a look at this right here and talk about this in exchange for $3.2 million.
Right. That's exactly right. And my thing is, when this information is available to the three of us, right? It's certainly available to the governments.
Right.
Where are the regulators? Right? Like, all these people say, hey, regulate these big corporate, whatever, regulate cryptocurrency. Where are the regulators? I mean, this is such a clear conflict of interest. Where are they at? So I have a prediction with this, but I want to hear what you guys are thinking here.
Okay. I mean, again, in a day and age where we are fighting a war on information, it's an information war. And unfortunately, it's come down to who owns these gatekeeping for information. It's about who owns the biggest and the loudest megaphone, right? Elon Musk buying Twitter, Jeff Bezos owning Washington Post, right? Washington Post is it.
Washington
There's
Post,
another media that's similar to that name. Now we got Bill Gates pretty much putting money in these pockets and saying, "Hey, I want you to talk about specific topics." And unfortunately, a lot of these topics are aligned with what he's doing, right? Like, we need, obviously he's behind these synthetic meat companies, synthetic food, and owning patents to medical and food technology. And again, he's using information in these catalysts of information as a way to create demand or problems that make him look like the savior. It's going to be impossible for any of these companies to say, oh, look at what Bill Gates is doing, let's exploit what he's doing. No, mark our words, guys, that Bill Gates, whenever you hear from Guardian, CNN, and some of these companies, you're going to hear nothing but good things about Bill Gates.
Well, Nick, I want to hear your thoughts in a second, but I want to throw this in here because, Sam, you alluded to Bill Gates' image, and that's certainly one of the things that he tries to protect by donating tens of millions, and sometimes hundreds of $millions to these media outlet companies. And even notice it was very hush-hush, right, that he was one of the main relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. That was kept very hush-hush. I had to do a lot of digging to find out that he has a very deep relationship with that man.
You think he paid money to keep the media quiet?
Oh, that's certainly, that has to be it, right? But I just want to throw that out there before, Nick, you say what you have to say.
Yeah, oh man, there's so much to, there's a lot to this, right? I recently read a report, I'm sorry, I can't tell you where I got it from. Not that it's secret or anything, but I just can't remember. But Bill Gates has a team of people scrubbing the internet actively.
That's correct. Yep.
Looking for, I mean, they're literally probably watching right now. Now, if you're in the chat and you work for Bill Gates, I hope you find God and get a new job.
Well, I think we did a story on that, and you know what we'll do is we'll go and take the video we did for Bill Gates. It's got like 300,000 views already. Take that and put it at the end, for the recorded side of this.
Oh, sure.
Just to show you what he does, right? And every year he attends conferences and events that has to do with blocking misinformation or again, I feel like the word misinformation was hijacked by big corporate oligarchs to basically censor things that are not in the most favorable, image for them, right? It's so convenient that they're like, oh, this piece of story or information is bad for a company, misinformation.
Right.
Come on, let's get to objectivity here, right? So, Yeah. So go and take us home, man.
So here's my issue with that too, right? I mean, there's a quote that I love, and I love quotes, right? You know, I think quotes are timeless, right? But there's a quote that says that if the king cannot stand the jester, he is a tyrant, right? And in many forms, right? Like, and there's different outlets and different, you know, I mean, for now at least, right? YouTube is a platform where you still have guys like Shapiro, you have us, right? And people who will advocate and fight for truth, right? Yeah. And I think we're entering a time where the king is wanting to get rid of the jester, right? And he's becoming a tyrant. Because let's look at the last 2 years, right? Here's my ultimate prediction with everything that's going on. What's the two things that's been on the news and in the media the most the last, let's call it 3-4 years? What do you guys think? Take a guess.
The last 3 to 4 years?
3 to 4 years.
Last 3 to 4 years. What has been in the forefront of the media the last 3-4 years?
Well, other than, you know, the Russia gate with Trump and
I would just say Donald Trump in general. 3 to 4 years. I mean, Donald Trump.
Literally him every single day.
Every day. Yeah.
Every single day. Not a single day that has gone by. Again, you hate the guy, like the guy.
He knows how to market. Let's just say.
So let me rephrase. When I say media, I'm not just talking about, you know, Bloomberg or Yahoo.
Sure.
I'm talking about, you know, Facebook, what things get pushed, social media, right? Because social media is a form of media, I'd say even more powerful. But the two things that's been on the forefront, and there's actual data and research backing this up with keywords, the two things have been, number one, the pandemic. Right. And number two, climate change.
Oh,
that's been the second thing, right? And in fact, if you look at the organizations that Bill Gates is the most financially involved with, they involve issues with pandemic, but also mainly, actually, more than the pandemic, climate change.
Yeah.
And you know, I can't help but make this connection. Is well, what's one of the major topics that's going to be talked about in Davos in 2023? Climate change.
Climate change.
Right, and issues with energy. And this is a guy who owns patents, like you said, who owns businesses, international businesses that pertain to non-organic agriculture, fertilizer, and chemicals, right? Processed food, synthetic meat, fake foods in general.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is the guy that's going to profit off of all those things. So I predict, guys, the next 2-3 years, climate change is actually going to be the biggest issue. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if in the 2024 election, there's a lot of questions that are asked because, you know, of course, a lot of the facilitators and the moderators of these presidential debates are members of the media, right? They're news anchors, very well-known news anchors. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these questions that are from the people pertain to climate change.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely, and unfortunately, that is I don't know the exact name of the bias, but it's like frequency bias or something like that. Like something that talks, like when something is talked about more often, it feels important because it's just talked about more often.
It's frequency bias. You're right.
Yeah. So it's and we all know that that's not correct, right? It's just because it's talked about often by some of these figures doesn't mean that it's important. Right, and what actually is a parallel to rational reality. So it's unfortunate that, again, a lot of these oligarchs, corporate overlords, government overlords, they want to control the narrative, they want to control the truth to steer us to certain, you know, selective topics or beliefs. And again, it makes us lazy to not choose and use our critical thinking, God-given critical thinking, to make our own decisions, to come up with our own path and thought process. And again, that's also a fear and concern for our kids in the future as well.
And at the end of the day, that's what our YouTube channel is all about, right? When we're independent thinkers, right? And we want to align with more independent thinkers, right? We want to create an online community through our channel of independent thinkers who do our own research, right? So with that being said, guys, hey, like this video.
Yeah,
right. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're jiving with what we have to say.
Yeah.
Right. But any additional thoughts, Nick? I know you got a topic as well to go over.
Real quick, just to close this out, man. I mean, this is textbook psyops, folks.
Yeah.
I obviously, you know, if you know anything about my background, which we've talked about before, I did a couple years in Army psychological warfare. I wasn't trained or anything like that. I just, you know, supported with, you know, being a video producer in that regard. But I mean, this is all just textbook stuff, man. It's just here's the biggest friction that I see when you are going to share this with your family or something like that. There's always some kind of disagreement, right? Or if they're not on the same frequency, right? Because they are hypnotized by the media per se. I would implore you to just find a way to help them discover it themselves.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the Great Awakening, right? The Great Awakening is how can you intelligently leave a breadcrumb trail for them to understand what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And some people, it's not going to happen. I was listening to Andrew Huberman. You guys know him?
Nice, big fan. Yeah.
As we get older, the neuroplasticity in our brains becomes less malleable, so you don't learn information the same. So some people, unfortunately, are just a lost cause. And I hate to say that, but
Yeah. Well, and two, man, we unfortunately live in a world, and this is sensitive to you guys because you guys are both dads, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you see why they're so careful about TikTok, right? They're so careful about these children and trying to get them to be a certain way because, well, as you get older, Nick, like you said, the neuroplasticity, right? It gets harder to get new information, and this is what blows my mind is I have friends that are liberal, right? That I have a lot of friends that are progressive, right? Just because I like to build relationships with people and find common ground, and I truly believe that is one way to transform individuals to seeking truth, right? And seeing the light is showing them love, right? And it just blows my mind though that this is what I'm thinking as I'm talking to them is they'll bring up data, right? Piece of data about the economy or whatever, and I'll challenge that argument or that article that they're sharing because it's usually an article from a media outlet, right? That they try to use as to support their argument. I go, hey, listen, man, I'm in this industry. Right? If it's about housing, affordable housing, right? I'm in this industry. I'm a landlord, Sam and I, right? We have multiple rental properties and, we have apartment buildings that we own. I know a lot of friends in this industry. I have friends who have, 5 billion AUM in their fund, right? With data, you name it, right? Guys like Ken McElroy, Jason Hartman, right? These are friends of ours. And none of those guys would back the claim, right? So the people that your media friends are getting data from, they're my friends. And I guarantee you that's not what they're saying. Right? And then they'll bring up, and this is what every one of them say.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey man, you can't get data from your own peer group. That's a bias.
Well, but the media company's getting from the data from
it's an echo chamber.
That's exactly right.
The problem, by the way, I've been interviewed by one of these big major publications, and I say stuff, they're asking me questions. It is 100% absolutely true that they will twist your words.
Oh, I read that article.
100%.
That
100%.
was, dude, when I read that article that was written about you, I was like, this is so not who you are.
No, it's 100%. Like, and it's sad. And this is why I'm like super cautious when some of these major publications want to interview us because are you going to report this based on what I actually said in the spirit of how I'm going to report it? Or are you going to go and misquote me and take it out of context?
Twist it.
Exactly. And again, that's the sad reality. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's going to happen with Bill Gates paying, $300-400 million is they're going to take facts, twist it, fabricate it, however they're going to do it to fit the narratives that these big oligarchs are paying these people, these companies for. So,
and they make money off of the narrative to summarize everything, right? So
100%.
Check this out, right? So now for those of you guys that don't know about what's happening with the TikTok controversy you're watching right now and you're going, well, I know it's an app where, teenagers do funny dances and weird pranks, but, what is it, right? What's going on? What's the controversy, right? Well, the controversy right now is whether or not it should be banned here in the United States. It struck up a lot of conversation. In fact, governors from the following states, Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, Iowa, Maryland, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, and Virginia have all advanced bans within the last few weeks. And so this is fairly recent, right? And on top of that, Congress just introduced a proposal this week within a larger spending bill that would ban TikTok on all government devices. Now, can you imagine if they banned it on a federal basis? Like you see these teenage girls walking around, right? They look like addicts, and they're just like, "Hey, man, you got any more than TikTok trends, right?" But what's really interesting is the question is, hey, well, why should it be banned? Right, a lot of people ask that, or should it be banned? And for even the people on one side, they're saying, hey, we need to ban it, period. Not even just government devices. Well, why would they be asking that? Well, check this out, guys. There's evidence that shows that Chinese businesses and governments are using this to gather information.
Using TikTok
specifically. In fact, here's an actual excerpt from TikTok's real terms and agreements. The thing that everyone scrolls through and never reads and just checks yes, right? That thing. So here it is, guys. So check this out, word for word, right? We collect certain information about the device you use to access the platform, such as your IP address, user agent, mobile carrier, time zone settings, identifiers for advertising purposes, the model of your device, the device system, network type, device ID, your screen resolution and operating system, app and file names and types, meaning they're getting into your actual phone, what's in there, all the data, keystroke patterns or rhythms, battery state, audio settings, and connected audio devices, meaning that they're listening to you at all times, where you log in from multiple devices. And I actually looked into this little line right here, where you log in from multiple devices, and it actually shows that as long as you have TikTok downloaded on just one of your devices, they have access to your files and everything else, audio, you name it, and all your devices, right? So kind of like how Google works, right? When you can log in from Google from multiple sites, right? So we will be able to use your profile information to identify activity across devices. So they're pretty much screening what websites you're going to, what are you looking at, even if you're not even in the app, right? And we may also associate you with information collected from other devices that you use to log in to the platform. But I thought there was a great resource that I found that really kind of summarizes the dangers of TikTok and its algorithm in 5 easy statements, right? So they have access to the camera. So pictures, phones, videos you made, the microphone, the Wi-Fi information, full contact list on the device as well. They gauge if the internet is available, and even if you don't have the Wi-Fi on, they still connect to the internet and the network.
Well, they collect the information, and next time you are online, that's when they send the data over.
Right. They keep the device turned on and automatically starts itself when the device restarts, and they secure detailed information on the user's location using GPS and other apps. And also, they read and write to the device's storage, right? So a lot of statistics I have on TikTok that I'm going to share with you guys that is very disturbing. But you guys are both fathers. You know, Sam, obviously, you know, my niece, Rebecca, your daughter. Nick, you've got 4 beautiful children that I consider, you know, to be my nieces and nephews. What do you guys do as dads when your kids come to you when they're old enough and say, hey, Dad, I want to download TikTok on my phone, or you catch your daughters or sons using TikTok? What is your guys' response as dads? And I know you guys are good dads. That's why I'm asking you the question.
Man, I'm like, so a conversation obviously would have to be had, right? I mean, none of my children have devices that are connected, you know, to social media at all. I mean, they have their own little tablets that they play their games on, which it's monitored. Everything's like, everything we have monitored. Anger wouldn't be my first response. Because I feel like if I was angry that they were on TikTok, then they would feel uncomfortable coming to me about anything. So I would just share with them the dangers of social media, of what it does to you physiologically, what it does to your mind, what dopamine is. Like, just not necessarily get too complicated, you know, just keep it real layman's, but like explain to them why it's dangerous and what it could be used against us as a whole society, because I like to think in the macro of
but
things.
Do you think that someone who is 6-year-old or a 10-year-old can actually understand that concept?
I think so, because it's all how you communicate, right? At least in my world, it's how you communicate, and they're going to ask a lot of questions, and that takes a lot of patience. And gotta be honest, man, some parents just don't have the patience, or they maybe, you know, there's so much going on at one time in a house with multiple kids and a big family that you need to just sit down and talk as a family. And that's a huge thing. In our family, we had something recently happen. Not bad, but like everybody sat down and talked about it. Once everything was figured out, we talked about it. It's very difficult to explain these very complex issues to kids, but if you just have an open conversation with them, it makes things a lot easier, and then they start comprehending. It takes time, but they will comprehend.
I think kids are a lot smarter than what we give.
Agreed.
You know, we give credit for. You know, sometimes we think, oh, they're kids, what do they know? But no, they're incredibly smart. They'll understand the comprehension level. They might not fully understand it, but I think, you know, Nick, what I think you're alluding to is just how you show up to the kids to understand, like, you know, what you're trying to do, or like at least how they feel, right? So from the intellectual level, I think most kids don't understand, you know, what TikTok, the damage they can do, or really any social media that's addicting, you know, video games included, you know, the amount of dopamine we put in kids' body. It's insane.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. As parents, we're waging war on our kids in terms of their attention, right? And the problem with TikTok and some of these things, yes, it's dopamine. It's very rewarding for the brain. It's insane. It's very addictive. In fact, it's one of the most addictive drugs you can possibly put in your body. The dopamine, the effects you get. So I think the biggest thing to do, and here's what I think is ultimately going to help, and what's going to harm your kids is what will help is knowing that. You obviously you care about them, that there's warmth and there's compassion, there's love, but at the same time, you don't want to play that parent of like Timmy, don't play with TikTok or don't get on TikTok, right? Or you're gonna get grounded, right?
Right.
Like I think like the disciplinary approach or the caring approach, I would say, is probably going to be the unhealthy way of approaching this. Right? I think the biggest thing a parent can do is build up your kids' self-esteem, give them confidence, give them a voice, give them responsibility to where they feel this sense of self-responsibility. They feel confident to exercise self-control because most kids can't. Right? Most kids are, they'll go hours and hours and hours just being on social media.
Well, speaking of which, with the authoritarian approach, right? I mean, if we talk about who owns TikTok, right? It's a company called ByteDance, right? It's a Chinese company.
Right.
In fact, what they're doing in China is very much of an authoritarian angle, right? So Douyin, I hope I'm saying that right. Douyin, China's version of TikTok. I'm sorry, I just married. They'd be like, "Hi, my name Elon Ma." Right? So I'm sorry, my mind went there, right? Okay, so Douyin, which is Chinese version of TikTok, they limit the use of how kids can spend on that platform to 40 minutes a day, right?
Yeah.
They limit that. Last month, under 18, right? So Chinese children under 18 in China were banned from playing video games during the week, and their play was restricted to 1 hour on Fridays, weekends, and holidays.
Wow.
And you know what? There is something to it because I was talking about it with Lisa, my wife, right? We were on the phone, and I told her, honey, you know what I think the two biggest disruptors and harmful things to young men, because let's be real, young men are they're doing a lot. Society is to try to demasculate them. I told Lisa, you know what I think the two biggest harmful things to young men are? Number one is video games. Number two is pornography.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you think about what TikTok is used for nowadays, I'll just be very, very clear. A lot of guys have shared with me. By the way, I used TikTok for maybe a week. I realized what it was.
I have no TikTok at all. Zero TikTok.
And I uninstalled it because I was like, let's see what these kids are, chirping about, right?
Yeah.
And so I downloaded. I was like, this is probably the biggest time waster. It's going to crush my productivity. There's no way we can, So I deleted it. But a lot of guys who have TikTok share with me that what they usually do is they see a really nice looking girl on TikTok, which if the algorithm knows what your gender is and how old you are, it's very easy to show you.
Right.
What you're gonna like, it's these women. And a lot of times what these women do is they use TikTok, they grow their following on TikTok to then get subscribers to their OnlyFans. And that's what they do, right? It's a pornographic website. So what's, this is very big disparity, right? Because even continuing, right, in China, starting February, Chinese children were banned from taking their mobile homes into school.
Not mobile homes, mobile phones.
Mobile phones.
That's an
Mobile
incredible.
homes.
That'd be impressive.
That's a great investment, by the way.
These
These Chinese kids, right? Mobile homes, right?
Changing interdimensional physics.
That's right.
Crazy.
It's unbelievable. That's how good they are at math over there, right? But there's something to that, right? And again, you guys are more compassionate dads. You guys are wanting to talk to your kids, but it's a serious issue because if we look at it here, the app's been downloaded. Check this out, over 2.6 billion times worldwide.
Jeez Louise.
Right, and not only that, this is what I found to be really scary. But the average user in the U.S., right, will use TikTok on average 95 minutes a day.
Wow.
That's over 1.5 hours. On the platform, and many, and I'll end with this
You do
one.
the math, man. That's like 1.5 hours times 5 days a week.
That's a lot.
That's 6 hours. That's almost like a whole work day.
That's 7.5 hours. That's 8 hours actually. 95 minutes.
So it's like a whole work day per week. People are spending on TikTok. That is freaking nuts, man.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
And so studies show, and this is actually, I think, a statistic that's going to be relevant to you guys as dads, right? Studies show that it increases levels of anxiety and decreases production
100%.
significantly when looking at Gen Z and younger millennials, right? So,
well, look at the damage it's doing. Number one, it is completely changing the view of the opposite gender, like especially for men. Like it does exactly what porn does. Is it objectifies people, right? You can no longer have an authentic, intimate relationship with both men and women. With these types of constant barrage of viewer. Not only that, like your attention span is destroyed, right? But it will completely destroy productivity, like you said, Daniel.
Yeah, for sure.
What dopamine does to your body when you're overwhelmed with dopamine, right? Everything else gets boring. Work gets boring, right? Productivity gets boring. Like building a business gets boring. Managing your finances gets boring, right? Literally everything else gets boring. Your body is screaming like, hey, I want more of that dopamine action that I just got because of TikTok. I'll make this comment, right? Because I know you said China has measures
For sure, yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with China's authoritarian.
Very authoritarian, yeah.
Right? But they have... Well, I disagree with the methods of use. I agree in their spirit that they are protecting the young kids because they don't know better in terms of deciding for themselves. I think China knows that this app is a weapon of a complete moral degradation. I now sound like a crazy religious guy, but let's look at it from a secular point of view, right? If a country or government can create an app that could completely destroy the moral standards as well as productivity of its citizens, and therefore it affects the GDP, economy, output, innovation, right? And you have a not only a standard but a completely authoritative way of controlling that. I think, what is this term called? Asymmetrical warfare?
It's exactly what it is.
So I fear that this, we're already in a deep mess of the CCP-sponsored corporatism attacking the U.S. productivity and its people.
Well, it's so obvious because if you look at versions of TikTok, because they have multiple in China versus in the U.S., the algorithm here in the U.S. pushes dances, pranks,
It's
non-productive things.
Yeah.
But if you look in China, they push a lot of engineering, science, math, right? Like this is what they push. So I mean, what more obvious evidence do you need? But we're advocates of freedom here, right? We call ourselves social defenders of freedom, so to speak, on the YouTube platform. But this is really interesting because we do believe in freedom. So check this out. So this is Professor Goyan, and this was published on Newsweek, and this is a quote. What did he say? He says, banning apps and access to platforms is what authoritarian regimes do. If the U.S. were to engage down this road, where would it stop? Because, my dilemma is, yes, the government's job is to protect and serve the interests of the American people, right? However, you can make the argument that, like, hey, if we ban TikTok, we're protecting and serving the American people, but on the other hand,